What's going on, everybody? This is Mike, and this is Serial at Night, episode number 54, I believe. Let me look. Yes, it is episode 54. Oh, man. Another week and another Jason Schreier hit story comes out. I'm just going to get right into it. You know, there was a lot of things I wanted to talk about today. And I pushed doing this podcast. I was going to do one, and I thought, hey, this is going to be a broken record if I do another podcast on this. Yeah, I'd done actually multiple podcasts on this exact topic about unionizing games and the problems of burnout and stress in the games industry. And I didn't want to get on my soapbox and start preaching again. But considering we have Kotaku and Jason Schreier deciding to write another hit piece about games development in order to, quote unquote, drive change and tell people stories, I need to get my voice out there. So I'm going to start with a little bit of background on me, just a little bit. I'm not going to go into tons of detail, but for 17 years, I've worked in software, web, and application development for many industries. So I've supported e-com. I've supported the news media outlets, $2 billion industry there. I can guarantee that if you have gone to any news media outlet in the last 10 years, software that's been running on some of those major global websites like, I don't know, CNN or, New York Times, you've used software that I've worked on. I've worked in the healthcare industry for a very long time and developed software that supports physicians, clinics, hospitals, patients, variety of different things. And I've worked in financial. So chances are, if you've used the internet, and if you've used budgeting applications, and if you've touched, basically, I've worked in the most important areas of everybody's daily lives. And that's not to pat myself on the back, right? And I've worked at a high level in software development in those areas, eventually moving to leadership. And the only reason I'm saying that is to at least provide some color onto my experience in these areas and working in software development for global companies. And so over the last 6 months or so, we've seen the gaming industry go through several layoffs at several different companies. And every time that a layoff has come up, we've seen mainly Jason Schreier write a hit article finding anonymous sources to complain about the company. These articles aren't written with any other intent than to give these anonymous, disgruntled employees a platform to complain. Now, I want to be clear. I want everyone to listen to what I'm about to say. I am not trying to discredit the complaints. I'm not trying to shout down people that are going to speak out, and I'm not trying to discredit people that are speaking anonymously. Sometimes that's the only option, especially if you want career protection. What I am going to say is that in these articles, when you get a sample size of, let's take Jason's latest article, for example, about Anthem and EA, you find 19 people. 19. Okay, the teams and the quantity of people that have worked on a game like Anthem will go into the hundreds, if not more. I couldn't find a specific number on it, but I would venture to guess, all things considered, you're probably looking at, a 300 to 500 person team. All things considered, maybe more. Okay, so 2 things come out in this article. It provides people an avenue to complain about BioWare, provides people an avenue to complain about EA, and it gives people an avenue to complain about each other. Now, first, before we get into that, EA and BioWare commented on the article before the article even came out. And that also drew criticism, obviously, from the games industry. So, to summarize, before we kind of move forward, for those that maybe not being completely in the know, layoffs have happened. Jason Schreier continues to write hit pieces to try to assassinate these companies using the anonymous voices of disgruntled employees, and it happens every time. The latest attempt is BioWare and what went wrong with Anthem. So, before this article was released, Kotaku or BioWare had already put out a response. And I'm going to paraphrase, and I want to start here because it's the crux of this entire podcast, because I'm not even so concerned on what was in Jason's article as much as focusing on how people can, should and can help drive change within their industry, not only games, because the things we're talking about today aren't exclusive to the games industry. So, basically, to summarize, BioWare had responded, actually maybe right when the article came out, about the criticisms in how they make games. And they say there's struggles and challenges to making video games. It's very real. The reward of putting something they created in the hands of players is amazing. People in this industry are passionate, so on and so forth. And then also said that articles like Jason's, again, paraphrasing, do more damage than good. They also took the opportunity to highlight that they do employee feedback, employee surveys, so on and so forth. So, all pretty standard things you would expect out of a response from BioWare. So, having been on the other side of this, having worked in software development that is fast-paced, highly stressful, at times requires a ton of effort and hours, I can tell you that companies do take stress and burnout very seriously. And the claims of abuse, I think, do a disservice to the employees that are still at the companies. I think the claims of stress and burnout anonymously to Kotaku does more damage to the employees that are still working at BioWare. Look, when companies do surveys to try to gauge where employees are, and they say they're anonymous, okay? That is your opportunity to start the dialogue with leadership. That is your opportunity to voice your opinion. You're not going to be reprimanded. If you do it professionally, you will not be reprimanded. It's an opportunity to bridge the communication gap that often happens between leadership and the workforce, especially in development. And this isn't a knock on developers, but developers can, in general, be be introverted, right? You have some extroverted individuals, and a lot of times those might be the individuals that maybe as a team you put in a place to really speak up for the rest of the team, right? If you really want to start to drive change and represent burnout. But again, what doesn't work is randomly running to Jason Schreier to cry about it. Okay? I cannot stress that enough. That when there is a culture problem at a company, two things need to happen. There needs to be dialogue to identify what the problem is. There needs to be dialogue to identify how it can be solved. And there needs to be dialogue to determine if this is actual abuse or just part of the job. And there's going to be some people yelling right now and saying, just part of the job isn't 80-hour weeks. And I hate to be that guy. Actually, I don't. Sometimes it is. And when you go into development at these companies, you are very well aware, if you work in software development, not just games, software development, the amount of effort that may need to be given at any certain time in the software lifecycle. And if that isn't for you, maybe software development isn't your thing, especially at a major corporation. The difference is you know that when you go add a Blizzard or an EA to your resume, that it will open doors for you. And sometimes you take that. And the rebuttal to that is often, well, companies take advantage of that. Supply and demand. It's simple as supply and demand. Yeah, it is. Welcome to global business in 2019. It's not fucking rocket science. The most sought after employers are also the most competitive, and they have their pick of employee because they have an ever-ending pool of applicants. That's just part of it. Because these employees know the benefits of putting a major corporation on their resume. I've done it for 17 years. And at any step of the way, if someone would have said, we're unionizing, I leave that company before it even starts. I want nothing to do with anything collective bargaining. I take ownership in my career. I voice my opinion when needed. I negotiate my salary for the expectations of the job. If that salary can't be met, I pass on those. I pass on those opportunities, and in general, own where I go and how I land. Now, some people say, well, maybe people don't have those same opportunities as you, Mike. Maybe not. Doesn't change the fact that people need to take ownership in their career first and foremost. And again, being disgruntled about your employer and running to Kotaku to complain about it is literally the worst step you can probably take. So, put that behind me for a minute here. Let's look at the article. So, Jason talked to 19 people, a big group of 19 people. Excuse me. I've been a little stuffy here these last couple weeks. There are comments like coworkers had to take stress leave, stress casualties. There's comments about pointing the finger about design overhauls and narrative reboots, and leadership was unable to provide a consistent vision. And they even say, and unwilling to listen to feedback. Okay. Actually, and one more. Depression and anxiety are an epidemic within BioWare. Okay, let's start with the anxiety, depression, stress casualties. Okay, that sounds like a poor culture. Not going to lie. Okay, but the root of that culture, I don't know if that is repaired by a union, right? You know, there's a piece of this where if you are getting burnt out and you are given PTO, paid time off, use it. Okay? Because stressful work environments and the demand for performance is not abuse. Okay? There are avenues given at these companies, and I know there are. I know that I know there are avenues given. Okay? If you need to take PTO, you're not going to be reprimanded for that. And if you are, then that is abuse. Okay? Depression, anxiety, and epidemic. That seems a little dramatic. People angry and sad all the time. That sounds a little dramatic. Coming from 19 people. Now, if these are true, then you need to use these avenues to have conversations with HR, with your leadership, with whomever. There are always avenues. There are protections put in place at these major companies so they can't reprimand against you. There's huge risk to it. Huge lawsuits could come about if they don't have the proper avenues put in place. And if you take those steps and those steps are ignored, then it's abuse. Okay? So, narrative reboots, major design overhauls, and the leadership was unable to provide a consistent vision and unwilling to listen to feedback. Yep, that's about as disgruntled as it gets. And that's something that moving into leadership, I've heard a million times. No one wants to listen to us, everyone says. I've been on both sides of it. No one wants to listen. People are always willing to listen. What people don't want to listen to is constant complaining and pointing fingers. Okay? Every one of these employees, I can tell you right now, probably isn't a leader. They're probably not even a good individual contributor, to be honest with you. If there are problems and things you want to complain about at an employer, constantly complaining is not feedback. Facilitating constructive and sometimes difficult dialogue is feedback. But if there are problems, you should offer solutions. Now, I can't say I wasn't in these meeting rooms, but I'll tell you right now, narrative reboots, major design overhauls, and consistent vision, that's not uncommon, right? So, in games, this is a little different concept, but in software development in general, taking a waterfall approach to software development, it's a project management methodology, right? It's kind of a big bang approach to software development where everything's on a timeline, there are major milestones, so on and so forth. That you have to kind of take a waterfall approach to building games because you need to get something out the door that works. In other software development industries, you can use more of an agile approach where you put MVP, minimal viable products out the door. And you're in a constant cycle of iteration, releasing new builds every, new builds. It could be every sprint, every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, every month, every quarter, right? And, you could release minor builds every month. You could release major builds every quarter. You could release minor builds every quarter, major builds every year. Doesn't matter, right? But you're in this constant state of evolution for the software. That's what games are trying to get to in a way, right? They need to get a game out the door. And the success in doing this has been hit and miss, right? Lots of games have come out broken. But they need to get something out the door so they can iterate on it, especially games like Anthem or livable worlds that are constantly changing. And so major design overhauls, narrative reboots, that's not uncommon. Companies, I know people hate the business speak, but sometimes you need to pivot. Sometimes the game isn't going right? But to sit here, this is just such it's just such a finger point. It's just finger pointing. Basically, it's trying to defer blame. Whoa, everybody hates Anthem? That wasn't on me. Man, the narrative reboots, major design overhauls, and that leadership. unable to provide a consistent vision. That's such bullshit. A game like this and software like this doesn't just get made overnight by one person's vision or consistent change. Games are fucking huge. Software can be huge. It's about managing relationships for a common vision, right? Getting people on board, creating buy-in. To the success that they did this, I don't fucking know. All I know is that every time a game comes out and it's fucked up in some way, people come out and start screaming, they lied to us. There was downgrades. Everything was stressful. I cried at work once. They demanded that I actually perform and deliver. God fucking forbid. Right? You know, it's for these reasons, it's just like, this is why they shouldn't show anything, because anytime, if over the course of 3 years, a lot of things can change. But to come out after every game is released and have someone like Jason Schreier and Kotaku go find disgruntled employees to write articles about how pissed off people are and how disgruntled they are when it could be teams of anywhere from 200 to 1,000 is fucking irresponsible. It's damaging to the people that are still working there. It makes it even more difficult for them to drive change, because things like this drive wedges between leadership and the people that execute on the work. It puts a larger gap in between the goals of those two teams in working together in collaboration. Now, there are some leaders that aren't good leaders that have the title, and sometimes you need to manage up. But when these articles continue to come out, it's not a good look. They don't offer any constructive feedback. There's no constructive feedback in any of the articles I've read. Everyone just screams unionize. That doesn't mean anything. Unionize in and of itself doesn't mean shit. Okay? Nobody is willing to just write an article about, here's what's wrong with the games industry, and here's some recommendations on how I think it can be fixed. And it's not a blanket fix. The problems at BioWare might be different than the problems at EA, which might be different than the problems at Microsoft, which might be the problems different than the problems at your fucking, local gas station, or, your retail office, or your call center, or your insurance firm, or your bank, right? All of these problems at every level of employment, from entry level up through leadership, the problems change. The problems are different. So throwing out a blanket statement like unionize every fucking time this comes up is lazy and irresponsible. What needs to happen is somebody needs to sit down and write an article about, here is how I think unionization in general could help the games industry, and offer solutions. Not that all of them will work for every company. And this is the thing. Everyone keeps going after the games industry like they should unionize like voice actors or something like that. It's not going to be that easy in games. You can't just put a blanket fix across the entire industry of games, because they're developing software with different goals, different methodologies, different practices, different developers, right? But this just leads me to believe that no one actually has the solution. People just want to bitch about it. And it is doing more harm than it is helping. It is. If you want to help, offer solutions. Just giving people the platform to bitch and complain. There's plenty of avenues for people to bitch and complain. Plenty of them. Just because Jason Schreier put in a fucking article doesn't make it any more valid. As a matter of fact, it does more damage. And it's irresponsible as a contributor to that team to run out to somebody like Jason Schreier and give those quotes. I'm going to tell you right now, the games industry or different teams can try to unionize. I've said this on Twitter and I'll say it again. It's impossible for me to even know if unions would be a good or bad thing at this point, based on the fact that I don't know what the split is between full-time employees, W-2 contractors, 1099 contractors. All of that stuff is relevant to know because who knows who's complaining here, right? W-2 contractors and 1099 contractors come in under a completely different set of circumstances than full-time employees. They come in with different benefits or lack thereof. Full-time employees come in with different benefits. And the key is you always have the ability to negotiate for yourself when you go into these relationships. That's not to defend all of this. I am sure there are culture problems at these companies. What I am saying is there are better avenues to go about it than continuing to run to Jason Schreier at Kotaku to write a propaganda piece because you think it's helping. It's not. It's not helping. Sorry, I'm getting a little heated, but it's irresponsible and stupid. Grow the fuck up, own your career, talk with people at work, put groups together, try to facilitate change, be a leader. Complaining and reacting is not helping. So, I mean, that's the crux of it. Like, I mean, I don't have an issue with, I don't have an issue for people wanting a better work environment. I don't have a problem with people wanting to have better benefits. I don't have a problem with any of this. What I do have a problem with is the immediate response to run to Jason Schreier, or wait for Jason Schreier to come to you and dig for 19 fucking people and a huge team that are willing to throw everybody under the bus. Because that's what they're doing. I agree. Software development in general is very stressful. I've done the 80-hour work weeks. It's not great. I've also benefited tremendously from it because I negotiated my salary knowing that was coming up. Right? I asked for a premium and I was given it. I've taken vacation when I've needed it. I've had conversations with my bosses when things have gotten stressful. I built alliances within organizations in order to help facilitate a better workspace for my team members. Right? I tweeted about this a few months back before I got laid off, because I was recently laid off. And before I was laid off, I fought to keep, leadership wanted to eliminate my team's bonuses. They wanted to pull some PTO. I wouldn't budge. I fought for it. So I can see how, when the number crunchers get in and they say we need to reduce cost, that they can do that. Maybe bonuses and some other things were, maybe the layoffs were a direct result of some of that. But fighting for the good of my employees is something that I'm willing to do all of the time. Right? But at the end of the day, there are budgets that need to be met. There are numbers that need to be met. There are revenue numbers that need to be met. There are margins that need to be met. There are KPIs that need to be met. Right? There are things that need to happen. High revenue doesn't mean profitable. Keeping teams around that are in the red isn't good business. Right? Like all of this stuff, all this stuff adds up. It's not a single... There's not a single fix, right? And again, these articles do less harm than good. It's complete, assassination without any real substance to their claims. So I don't know. That's it. I've been on my soapbox, kind of ranting here for 30 minutes. I don't even, I'm gonna put this one out there, but All I can say is, for everybody saying, yeah, good, got to get this information out there. Yeah, I think you do. I think people do need to get this information out there in a more responsible way than writing a hit piece with 19 disgruntled employees constantly complaining. I think if the news media industry if the gaming and media industry actually cares about driving and facilitating change, they'll go about it in a more tactful way than writing these bullshit articles that do nothing except put gas on the fire. And they think it's helping. It's not. So that's it for me. Episode 54. Cereal at night. See ya.